here we are today with Kelly Weiser and Zach Hurst of the Weiser Agency. They're going to tell us about all things insurance here in Santa Barbara. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for having us. We're excited to get a chance to be here and to do this. And like I said, we'll try and make insurance fun as we possibly can these days. But so my husband Nick and I own the Weiser Agency. We're a team of about 15. In addition to the two of us, we're based here in Santa Barbara, up on the Riviera.
And so, what are some specific trends you're seeing, not just in insurance, but locally here in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, good question. So. I think locally here and throughout all of California, most of the news stories are about how challenging insurance is these days and how difficult it is now and has been for a while. And that's definitely something that we're seeing for new clients. There are still solutions. So a lot of times we'll get questions about like, hey, is this property still insurable? What are our options? Or we've heard that you can't get insurance here. The good news is you can pretty much get insurance anywhere. It's just a matter of being creative, really, and strategic in how you structure a policy, which is different than how it has been. So some of the trends we're seeing with that is maybe some clients are choosing to have less coverage for like their personal property or to pay for them to live elsewhere because they're being strategic about what they want to pay for when it comes to insurance. Also starting to see that some areas that maybe you would have considered, I don't necessarily consider high fire. Insurance companies are now starting to consider high fire.
Yeah.
And so that's pushing more clients to a surplus lines or a non-traditional carrier as well as the California Fair Plan.
Okay, so that's a perfect segue because we definitely want to talk about California Fair Plan. That's something all of us in Santa Barbara are familiar with. Obviously a very hot topic here in Santa Barbara because so much of our area now, that's maybe the only option available. So do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Absolutely. So FAIR is a very regular carrier, like you mentioned, in Santa Barbara specifically these days. I'd say about 50 to 60% of home buyers are either turning to that option or a non-admitted carrier, meaning not regulated by the Department of Insurance, the same way your regular Farmers, State Farm, Chubb would have been. For FAIR, we do look to put two policies in place, that being a companion and the FAIR, to mimic what a better home policy looks like. For most homes, FAIR can be a really great solution if you're working with a local broker. Really, you don't want to handle FAIR alone. It's a very tricky process.
Right.
And I'd say having two policies can be very confusing for a first-time or third-time, fifth-time home buyer, right?
Right.
So really, we look to put those two policies in place. With FAIR, we look to file for things like fire, whether wildfire, kitchen fire, wind, lightning, hail. With the companion, we'd look to do sudden and accidental pipe burst, your liability, or a falling object like a tree. So really, we're mimicking that standard home policy just with two policies. So it sounds scary, but really can be a great alternative out here in Santa Barbara.
Speaking of being informed, so there's probably folks watching this, whether they own a home or they're thinking about getting into one and they're thinking, gosh, this sounds very expensive. What are some things I might be able to do, some must-dos to bring those costs down, maybe things that aren't super expensive or take a lot of time?
Yeah, I'd say, so if you're looking to like sell your home or if you're looking to consider purchasing a home, a few things to keep in mind. So like just because a home has been insured through a standard company, like a State Farm, Farmers, Allstate, whatever it may be, definitely does not guarantee that a new owner would get coverage through that same carrier. So if you're looking to sell your home, it's always recommended to see what kind of the insurance market would be for that property today, just so then you're not getting clients' hopes up or prospective buyers' hopes up saying, yeah, it's currently insured by XYZ, you can totally get that now. That way you have, I think, a more realistic starting point. If you're looking to buy a home too, you can always, or sell, but it's always helpful to check a property address because then you can find any prior claims property. So maybe it's a home that's downtown and it's not considered at all to be high fire and you think that you're golden, but perhaps there's a hidden claim or something that popped up within the last 5 years that can make insurance more difficult to get for a new buyer.
What about things, and I'm going off past experience working with you guys, but things like installing an auto shutoff on a gas valve, or now they're even doing them for water, right? This smart kind of shutoff, or things that you might want to check, get your gutters, you know, up and running. Again, I'm just throwing out little things. Are there, like, if someone's preparing to put their house on the market, are there quick little items that generally show up that insurance companies look upon favorably, that would help them, again, either have an easier time getting insurance or get less expensive insurance?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say it depends. So there's a couple items, like you mentioned, the automatic water shut-off device that can definitely make a home easier to sell, especially in today's insurance market where it can be required by certain carriers. I'd say more importantly than even a device like that would be for a buyer to know things like approximate age of things like roof, plumbing, wiring, and heating. I'd say that's one of the most important things that carriers ask these days because they want to understand the risk.
Do you see a brighter outlook for things, or?
I do,
Okay,
over the
good.
long term, yes. So I think that we are in this, I think it'll continue to be a challenge insurance market for the next year or so. We'll see beyond that. But we are in a very desirable community, especially compared to, you think a lot of California is very high fire up in the hills. There's a lot that we have working in our favor here in Santa Barbara and Montecito. There's also there's a lot of reasons why the insurance companies would want to insure, because there are a lot of properties with immense pride of ownership that are very well taken care of. A lot of clients who say, yep, I can install that auto water shutoff or whatever it is. So all that works in our favor. Where we're starting to see a little bit of movement is on the ultra high end. We're seeing more carriers, those non-admitted carriers like we mentioned, come in and they're getting a little bit creative. They might do as creative as insurance companies can get, but they might do like a really high wildfire deductible, but a very reasonable general deductible. And then because of that, exactly, because of that, they'll say, yes, we can insure this property, whereas 6 months ago, the same company may have said, nope, we can't do it in that area. So the splitting of the deductibles, the layering different policies, we're also starting to see some traditionally insurance is saying, we'll insure up to this value. We've also seen in the last year some insurance companies say, we will insure starting at this value. So we'll insure very high-end homes starting at this price point or this reconstruction value, but nothing below. So they're mitigating their risk, their market saturation in that way. So we're starting to see that on the higher-end homes, and that over time does transition down to like more standard general market. So I'm optimistic about that. And we are seeing, I would say, every 6 to 8 weeks, a new carrier pop up and have interest in insuring our area. They're not going to be a household name company, but we're starting to see more and more say, yep, we'll take on a risk. And they may have some specific weird requirements, but usually we can find a way to work with them.
So since we're in March, Women's History Month, we definitely want to highlight that. And Kelly, being a very successful working mother, do you have any anecdotes or anything that you want to kind of talk about, you know, your experience, you know, starting this business and also being a very great mother to your children?
Thank you. Well, you'll have to ask them what they think, but at 2 and 4, they have all their own opinions.
They got opinions.
There have been many times where I'll take my kiddos around to different properties, like with California Fair Plan. One of the things we do is take exterior photos of the house. So depending on that, sometimes we'll go out and take the photos for clients. So there have been a couple of times where I, with like a 2-year-old in my arm, have gone to a house and taken photos of the house. Have had a couple people come out and say, "What are you doing? Why are you taking pictures of my house?" But yeah, it's really neat and very special to get to drive around town with the kids and say, "Hey, we know the family that lives there, and we get to protect that business over there." And I remember getting to do that as a kid with my parents and the businesses that they were in. So it's fun now to get to be able to genuinely be a part of our community here in so many ways.